I'm making my guest's favorite drink.
You picked a mojito, Vesper Martini.
The House of Balloons cocktail.
Nice and crisp.
Join me and some of the world's greatest writers.
Multi-award-winning author of 5 novels.
Best-selling author of more than 20 books.
The Pulitzer Prize, among many other awards.
Welcome to Dedicated. Today, I am thrilled to be with Ken Follett. He is world famous for his thriller novels as well as historical fiction. He's published in more than 80 countries and has sold approximately 200 million books. Two of his better-known titles are Eye of the Needle, a thriller, and also Pillars of the Earth, historical fiction. I have my U.S. first edition right here on the table. Ken has been appointed Commander of the Order of the British Empire for his services to literature. He's also done a tremendous amount of charity work, in particular for literacy. His latest book is called Circle of Days, historical fiction set in the time of the origins of Stonehenge, and it's terrific. Ken, it is awesome to be with you. Welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Well, we're going to kick it off with some champagne, was your request. So that's...
Oh, boy.
The ice pail is always good for the show sound effects for the listening-only audience. We're going to pop over a little Dom Perignon here as I get the foil off. So I have, in watching some of your earlier interviews, I did observe that you are truly a champagne drinker. This is the way for you.
Absolutely. I'm very fond of it.
By the way, when were you made Commander of the Empire?
Well, you know, it's probably a good thing that there's not much of an empire left for me to command. I wouldn't have been very good. It's a great honor, and I'm very pleased to have it, and it recognizes, you know, that my 76 years have been not without some success.
Who was the royal who performed the ceremony?
I was the king. Yeah.
Right. What year was this?
This is a while ago. I think he was still Prince Charles then.
All right, this is a 99 Dom. Let's hope it held up in the cellar.
Well, it should have. Dom Perignon should last very well. And, well, let's see. Oh, you can smell it. It is aged.
Sure. Hopefully not too much.
No. Well, let's taste it. Oh, that's great. But you can taste.
It has turned a bit. Yeah. Well,
it's a little.
Yeah.
It's a little like just a little hint of a mature white wine.
Okay.
Underneath that, but so great. Let's
let's have at it, I guess.
Well, we finished the bottle. Is there another bottle over there?
So, as we were discussing just before we went live here on the show, you grew up in the family faith was a fairly strict Christian denomination of Plymouth Brethren.
Yes, and it was quite Puritan, and also, as those sects are, very, very dogmatic. So the Puritan aspect was that we didn't have TV or radio or a record player in the house, and I was not allowed to go to the movies, which the movies part was really difficult for me because all my friends every Saturday morning went to the local cinema where they showed serials for kids. And they would, of course, they were... Monday morning at school, they were all full of the shows they'd seen, and I was left out. But I joined the public library when I was 7, and so instead of going to the movies, I borrowed books. And in the long run, that was probably not a bad choice for me.
Yeah,
It's turned out to be quite useful in my career.
What were some of the books you were reading at that time? So this would have been...
I liked... There was an English author called Enid Blyton who wrote very exciting books for kids of all ages. She was a genius, really. And so there was a group of kids who got involved in detection of crimes, and they were called the Famous Five, and it was actually 4 kids and a dog, and I loved those books. I just loved those books, and actually, the day I joined the library at the age of 7, I thought it was Christmas. I said, I can have any one of these books? And they said, you can have 2.
Detective stuff is such a good... growing up for me, it started out with Frog and Toad, which is probably after your time. Those were just coming out when I was born. But then the Hardy Boys got me through many years of reading before I got into Tolkien and other things.
Right.
By the way, I know you're a Tolkien fan because when I was reading Circle of Days, there was a line in there we're going in circles. We've been here before. And I could just picture Elijah Wood saying the line in the movie Lord of the Rings. I don't know if you deliberately did that.
I don't remember that. It's probably a recurring thing in stories, actually. You get lost and you say we're going around in circles.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, I got to the age of 12
Mm-hmm.
and I'd read all the books in the children's library. And so they let me into the adult library. And I discovered two authors who I still greatly admire. Ian Fleming. The James Bond stories, I just thought they were the best thing ever. And of course, I wanted to be James Bond, not realizing at that age that I was never going to be 6 foot tall. And of course, I was never going to have, what were they called? Ice blue eyes.
Yeah.
Oh, ice blue eyes and a rather cruel mouth. None of that was waiting for me when I grew up. But I did enjoy those books. And I also discovered Shakespeare, funnily enough. They had the Shakespeare plays in single volumes, and I used to read them just for the story. So, and that was really the beginning of my literary education.
Isn't that great? It's all storytelling in the end, whether you're Ian Fleming or Shakespeare. For me, too, I had Ludlam, who I loved, and I loved John Irving and Hemingway, too. I mean, totally different kinds, but it's all storytelling in the end.
Yeah.
So you were, I have read, an indifferent student, I think is how you described yourself. So what turned it around? Just getting out of the classroom was enough?
I was bored in school for a long time. And because I was bored, I misbehaved. And because I misbehaved, I was unpopular with the teachers. But then I got to about 14 and it started to get interested. And we started to do Shakespeare, which I liked. And I did chemistry. I found that interesting. Before it had all been a teacher standing up there telling us stuff that was really boring. And suddenly I got into it. And from then on, I was okay. Mm-hmm. I stopped getting into trouble. I stopped misbehaving. I did, for a while I did.
Was it just little bits of trouble, detention after school, or were there big trouble?
Well, at a signing a few years ago, a woman came up to me and said, "You won't remember me, but we were in the same class at Harrow Weald School." And she said, "And you used to do the most outrageous things." And I had forgotten, but I did. So one day I brought an alarm clock to school and set it to go off in the middle of a lesson and put it in somebody else's desk. Of course, because I made everybody. I liked making everybody laugh. Everybody hooted with laughter except the teacher, who was really annoyed. And I did that kind of thing. I like to make people laugh. Maybe I should have been a stand-up.
I was going to say, this is the good kind of trouble. That's fun.
I guess it is. Yeah.
So from school, you then go on to a career in journalism. So you you did that for a few years or so, which is, of course, there's no money in journalism and that kind of journalism, really. And then after a few years there, transitioned to publishing. You're picking all the careers that are famously paying peanuts.
Well, I guess I was a reporter, for 5 years, and then I worked for a publisher for about another 3 years. While I was a reporter, I started trying to write fiction. Mm-hmm. And
what beat were you on? Were you like covering crime or
I did all kinds
politics?
of things. I did all kinds of things. I guess my best interview was Stevie Wonder.
Wow.
Now that was a really great one. And he was fun. He was quite a funny guy. We were the same age. We must both have been 21 or 22 at the time. And he was a little bored with doing interviews. Mm-hmm. He was on tour. It was a Motown tour of Britain, and he was on tour. And so he said some quite funny things. I said, "Have you got any hobbies?" And he said, "I like roller skating." And I thought, is he winding me up?
Right.
Is he And I wasn't quite brave enough to say that, that's a joke, isn't it? So I pretended not to notice that blind people can't go roller skating. But he was absolutely on the edge of his great career. He had just made an album called Music of My Mind, which was fabulous. Moved far away from the standard Motown stuff that he had been doing, which, by the way, I loved anyway. The stuff he'd been doing since he was 13 years old. That was I really enjoyed that.
I forgot he had such an early start.
Yeah.
He was a teenager when he really got rolling. I was going to say, he's so composed to be joking around in an interview like that at 21, but he'd been doing it for 8 years already.
He was very relaxed, yeah. Much more relaxed than I was.
Yeah. So did you end up getting disillusioned with journalism, and that's why you made the career switch to
I just
publishing?
realized that I didn't love newspapers. I really loved books, especially novels.
Yeah.
And that was and I sort of moved in that direction, and I was much happier.
Were you thinking that? So you were on the business side of the publishing world as opposed to being an author yet at that time.
That's right.
Was there always a plan though that you might write?
Yeah, well, it was, it wasn't so much a plan. I thought it would be great to be a best-selling author. But I thought if that doesn't happen, maybe I could be a publisher, maybe I could be a publisher's editor. In those years, I still had an open mind. I did want to be a big star, but I didn't mind in what.
Did you ever edit anyone?
Oh, sure. Oh, well, nobody you would have heard of, I don't think. But yes, I was an editor, and I think that helped me because at the same time I was trying to write novels of my own. So somebody would come to me with a proposal for a novel or a first chapter or something, and I would think, okay, is this something that I could find myself taking to booksellers, and the bookseller saying, okay, I must have that book. It's great. I want 100 copies. And then I would ask the same question about the book I was writing myself. Are the booksellers going to get excited about this? Are they going to pile up the book in the shop?
Mm-hmm.
So it sort of focused me on what makes a successful book.
Yeah. So I've watched a number of your interviews getting ready for today. You're very brave to drink that, by the way, and you're very kind to say it's just aged gently because it's fine. It's not great, the champagne. I'm a little embarrassed about this. But I am going to drink it anyway.
Me too.
But I just saw a video you were in where you're telling the story that I don't know if it was your agent or your editor, but had suggested you might use a pseudonym for your book. And you said, well, okay, we could do that, but why? And she said, well, because one day you might want to write one that's really good.
That's exactly right. That's a true story. And it was a bit of a blow at the time, but she was right.
So you have a few out that are under another name, a made-up name, and then...
They're really not out anymore. I mean,
okay.
My early books were published, but they weren't very successful. And most of them are now hidden away far, where nobody can read them.
But then we fast forward to Eye of the Needle,
yes.
which is just a blockbuster, I think 10 million copies sold, and a movie, and now you are a star, and you're not scratching a living anymore. You're a rich guy.
That's right, and I'm very happy and very pleased, and I've had some luck too.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that was a thriller. And as I said up top, you've done thrillers and what is sometimes referred to as epic fiction, your historical novels, which are phenomenal. Just within my family, there's a funny story. We would go, you must hear this kind of thing all the time, but we were traveling around Europe looking at cathedrals, and I'd recently read Pillars of the Earth, and I'm talking about all the things that you've deeply researched and put forward in this, very human tale, but it's all in there. So I'm pointing out things about the technical aspects of architecture. They're like, Dad, you're so annoying. And I'm like, well, I just read this Ken Follett book. It's fantastic.
Well, those details can be quite interesting.
Oh, totally.
And they're interesting when the people who are building the place are making it up as they go along. Mm-hmm. And that's, they come across a problem. The tower is not secure enough. We need to somehow find a way to stop the tower falling down. And so then the technical details become a drama, and it's somebody's problem that he or she has to solve. And I think that's the key. I mean, I like those technical details, but they have to be personalized. The dry stuff, you can't just write that stuff dryly. You've got to make it something that somebody cares passionately about.
Otherwise, you're reading Architectural Digest or something like that, and that doesn't stick. It's human, then you absorb it, and it's indelible.
Exactly, yeah. Novels are always about the people in the end, yeah.
And so Pillars of the Earth, I've got my first edition here, but you sold 29 million copies, thereabouts.
That's right.
It was just a different era for books then. Everyone was reading the same book. I mean, now they went viral in the way that an Instagram video goes viral now. Today we're like, did you see the one with the guy and the thing? And we're like, yeah, but back then it was like, did you read The Godfather? And everyone says, yeah, of course. It was a different time. Can you describe that period of time in the book world when, Pillars or Eye of the Needle were coming out?
Yeah, it seemed to be a smaller world, and it seemed to be that everybody, there would always be a handful of books that everybody was reading. And it was the same with TV, actually. In the old days, we all used to watch, there were only 2 channels at one, or 3 channels, and now there are, I don't know, 150. But the thing was that next morning you got to work and people would say, "Did you see that show last night?" And everybody would talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a bit of that. And I love, mind you, people still talk about books a lot. I mean, it's not that people aren't all reading the same books, but people enthuse. Mm-hmm. And when they love something, they want to share it. Mm-hmm. And that's really how books are sold. I mean, all the things we do, advertising and all that kind of thing, but the real way that books are sold is that somebody finishes the book and puts it down, and the first thing they want to do is call their best friend. Yeah. And they say, "I've just read this great book, you must get it." And that is really the best advertising you can get.
That's that word of mouth, and it gives you the nice long tail on the sales. It's sort of reverberating around a little bit.
That's right.
Because as we were also just talking before we got going here, the publishers really ask you to punch a lot up front and get the pre-orders going and a big first week and do the rounds and try and get a big number out of the gates, but and then it tails off. If it's not a book with staying power,
and if it's got staying power, then Lee Child said to me the other day, "This is a great business to be in. You write a book, and 20 years later, you're still getting paid for it."
That's true, especially with books in a series, because people come to it and then they go back and they buy your backlist and that sort of thing. Lee's great, by the way. Also, I know you guys are friends, and he and I got to know each other. He was episode number 2 of this show, and also chose champagne as his drink, and just a terrific, generous, cool cat.
Absolutely,
lovely. And also I think a commander of the empire.
Yes, indeed. Yes.
So when obviously Eye of the Needle was transforming for you in terms of career and lifestyle, but by the time Pillars comes out, now it's just you're filthy. You went from rich to filthy rich now. So how did it kind of change the lifestyle? Because I know I saw the Caddy K interview with you on BBC, and it was at your home, which is this very beautiful townhome, and life is good for a Follett.
I got to tell you, I have no complaints. But I mean, the main thing is, of course, I like making money and I like spending money. But the main thing is the satisfaction. It's the writing something and feeling that you're good at it. Coming to the end of the scene and thinking that's really pretty good. I mean, I try to be self-critical, and I also ask other people, because I show my first drafts to a lot of people and encourage them to tell me if there was anything they found boring or they disliked. Or
is it many of the same people now as it was before you were a big star?
No, it varies. It's my family, and
can they still be unsparing? Because one thing that I wonder is like someone becomes huge, like Tom Wolfe, and is the editor still as brave about making an edit when Tom Wolfe is a superstar as opposed to prior?
Well, editors are a different thing. My friends and my family know who I am. Yeah. They know I'm not a big shot. They know I'm just Ken or Grandad, and
they'll still give you the tough love.
Absolutely. I do sometimes have to encourage editors and say, if an editor says to me, "Ken, you're a genius, and the book is absolutely wonderful," I have to explain to them, "Look, I need something more from you than that. Mm-hmm. I don't need to be told that I'm wonderful. What I need to be told is, was there a boring bit? Was there a moment when you looked to see how many more pages you had to read? Fatal that, when a reader does that. Or was there something you didn't understand? Or was there a character you really didn't like?" That's the kind of thing I need. Mm-hmm. And I know that my first drafts are not perfect, and they can really be improved. And I just sometimes need little hints as to where I should have another look and do things in a different way or tighten something up. So I really value that. But at the same time, I enjoy this process. Mm-hmm. I enjoy rewriting. A lot of people think rewriting is really boring. It's not actually, because every little thing you do makes the book a little bit better.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's stay on process, because I saw a glimpse into your library/office, which is behind a secret door of bookshelf panels. And in there, it is a very different setup from what you could possibly have had in the 70s when you started out. You have 3 giant computer screens in there with the first draft. And could you take us through how your process is set up now?
Well, I really like having the 3 screens when I'm rewriting, because on the left-hand screen I have my first draft. On the right-hand screen, I have a summary of all the comments that people have made about the first draft. Historians, for example, I always have a couple of, sometimes 5 or 6 historians who read the first draft and point out errors. And also then editorial stuff, people who have read it and say things like, I didn't like this character. Or there are mistakes that editors find out. Like this guy has brown eyes in chapter 3 and blue eyes in chapter 8 and all of that. And readers notice that kind of stuff. You've got to correct that stuff. So then the middle screen is draft 2 that I'm actually writing. And that works really well for me. It is a bit show-offy, 3 screen, like I'm in, a stockbroker.
It's a long day, a long way from the days of typewriters and whiteouts and,
and that stuff you used to paint when you had to...
Yeah, the whiteout, little brush over it. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah,
we call it whiteout over here, I guess.
Okay,
like the nail polish thing.
Absolutely, and it was... And then I got a typewriter that had a strip of this, like the typewriter ribbon, only it had a strip of Tipp-Ex. So you just had to go back and type the same letter again, and it would be...
Oh, it'd do it for you. Oh, that's great.
That was a better invention than a computer, to tell you the truth.
I have also read that you write the first draft, and then when you write the second, it's not like you're making little tweaks. You completely rewrite.
Yeah, I
from scratch.
Write every phrase.
So you just climb the mountain a second time.
Yes, and it's really worth it because almost every sentence I make some improvement, and which that makes it worth it. And while I think to myself, I want millions of people to read this.
Yeah,
I can't give them something that I think is just okay. It's got to be better than just okay, and I've got to work twice as hard. The first draft is okay. And sometimes publishers say, let's publish the first draft. It's really good. And I say, no, I know I can improve on that. And I think that sort of perfectionism is something I've acquired I didn't start out a perfectionist, but it's something that's happened to me because I'm aware of how many people are waiting for this book.
Yeah.
And they're looking forward to it. And I would hate to disappoint them.
I think that's awesome. And I think if a writer doesn't fall in love with the editing process, it's tough to be great. And there's so many out there now who put out 2 thrillers in 1 year. And that can't be more than okay. And I feel like that's a real problem for books going forward, because if you keep putting out something that's okay and people read it, they're like, I'll try out Amazon Prime and Netflix and things like that. It's the great books. When Amor Towles comes out with a new book, I'm like, go Amor. Someone's going to have a great experience with that. And they're going to come back for another book. And, you put out a bunch of books that are okay. That's not good for bookstores and libraries and the writing community.
I'm really vividly aware of the other attractions that people have, the other things they could do rather than reading a book. They could be watching TV, they could be streaming, they could be playing computer games, they could be going to the pub for a drink, they could be going to the movies. There are lots of great things to do now, and I want them to sit there with a book in their hands. And it's superficially, it's not exciting, is it? I mean, it's just you sitting there. It's you and the author and your imagination and the author's imagination working together.
Yeah.
Of course, we know, you and I know, and millions of people know that it's great when it works, but I'm constantly aware that it's so easy for them to put the book down and watch TV or go to the laptop and start playing a game or surfing the net or watching YouTube. All these great forms of entertainment, and my job is to make them say, no, I'd rather read a Ken Follett book.
Yeah. As you say, superficially, it looks totally boring, but nothing activates the mind more than that. It's doing the whole thing. It's doing the costume design and the set design and all the stuff is happening.
You're directing your own movie when you're reading a novel. Yeah, it's great.
So staying on process for a bit, who are some of these early readers who are giving you feedback on the left screen? The left screen. The right screen. The
right screen, the feedback. Well, I have a couple of friends who give me good notes. A guy called Chris Manners, who is studied literature at Oxford University, but he likes popular fiction, and he points out he points out stuff about my books that I hadn't noticed. My wife, Barbara, is an early reader, and she asks questions like, how does this person feel about this? What does she feel about her husband now? Barbara will ask that question. And that's great, because I realize there's something that needs to be said about this character that I've left out, and Barbara has noticed that. I have editors, and I've said I encourage my editors to be critical, and a good one is worth her weight in gold. And I say her because most editors in publishing are women. And of course the historians. And I look at the books that I've read over the course of writing the first draft, and I think, well, which of these writers was a really clear thinker and really knowledgeable? And then I get in touch with them, which is not difficult. They're mostly university professors. You can get their email on the internet, and I say, I've enjoyed your book very much, and it's helped me in writing my novel, and I wonder if you would care to be a consultant on this book. And I pay this for them I want them to take it very seriously, and I pay them, and so I should. I mean, I'm making money out of it, and they're entitled to make money out of it if they help me. And I ask them so they read the first draft, and I ask them, write me a report, and look for things that are wrong for this historical period, but also not just wrong, but maybe just slightly off for the historical period, and make a page-by-page note. Say, page 10, this couldn't happen in the Middle Ages. Page 11, and they write me. It's usually 20 or 30 pages, sometimes more, and so I have to collate all this information, and then I go through page by page and write it again, do the corrections, add the stuff that editors have suggested needs to be added, occasionally take stuff out that they've said, you've said this twice, so you can cut it out the second time. And that's for me, it's a really important process.
Well, as the reader, you can feel the whole story comes through with that much more force, because all of that work you've done is there. And really, as I've read your books in the past, on the one hand, I'm like, it's a little bit like Tolkien or George R.R. Martin, because you've created this wonderful world and it's your invention. But really, it's so grounded in actual thing. You're more, in a way, like James Michener or something, I suppose. I don't know these comparisons are sort of pointless because you're your own thing, but...
No, but there are, amongst authors, some are keener than others on the factual basis of the story, and I'm quite keen on it. And Michener, of course, was a writer who was very focused on that.
Yeah,
and I like it because. First, I get ideas from this search. Ideas for new dramatic scenes that I haven't thought of, but also it gives a sense of realism to the story. If the reader can tell that the author knows about this, it might be a landscape, or it might be a historical period, or it might be some process. It gives the reader the feeling that there's a basis in fact for this. This is all the kind of thing that could really happen. And you have to know that. You have to make sure you don't make mistakes. And you have to introduce it in a way that it's a real part of the drama.
Yeah.
You don't want a casual paragraph. Emile Zola does this all the time. It really gets on my nerves. He's a great writer, Zola, but there'll be a whole page of description that's not really part of the story.
I know what you're saying. It's like you're just flinging a bunch of research at the reader. Right, it has to be woven in and feel credible.
Exactly.
And if it's done well, as you do it, it actually dials the reader into the story even more.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let's talk about Circle of Days for a bit. By the way, I just listened to a podcast as I was reading this, because I wanted to learn more about Stonehenge. I don't know if you ever listen to history podcasts. Do you ever do these sort of things?
No, I haven't.
There's one I totally recommend called A Short History of, and then it'll be, Joseph Stalin or whatever, but they do one on Stonehenge, and in about 45 minutes, it's fantastic. British reader, it's this amazing voice. Anyway, I learned a lot about Stonehenge as I was reading the book, and everything in here, it was like spot on.
Okay.
It was just terrific. So take us through a bit of Circle of Days, if you can.
Well, the thing about Stonehenge, it inspires you with awe, but you soon start to think, you soon start to ask yourself questions about this place. These enormous stones, they're 7 or 8 yards high. They weigh 25 tons. And there they are in the middle of a quite plain landscape. And, who built this? And how did they build it? And why did they build it? And you start to get intrigued by these things. One of the big questions is, how did they move these stones? So 25 tons, almost all of those stones came from a wood 17 miles north of Stonehenge. And so how did they get from the woods to Stonehenge? Well, they had not invented the wheel. There were no carts. And they had not come up with the idea of getting horses and cattle to pull stuff for them. That also was to come in the their
We're at
future.
like 2500 BC here.
Exactly.
At this point.
And so the stones must have been pulled by people. Somehow people moved those stones without additional help. They did have ropes in the Stone Age. The ropes were made of honeysuckle vines.
Amazing.
Fun fact. A little bit of research there. And architects now, there's a field called experimental archaeology. Architects try things out. So they say, okay, let's suppose that these stones were pulled by people with ropes. How many people would it take to pull a 25-ton stone? And the answer is 200 people. Now, so first of all, imagine that. How much you need a heck of a lot of rope for 200 people to get hold of a bit and heave on it. Plus, how do you get those 200 people together? I mean, these are not people who are sitting around reading the paper. These are people who are working. And I think almost certainly they were herders. The people who built Stonehenge were probably herders. But they had to come away from their work. And so this is a kind of social movement. How did that happen? There must have been, I think, somebody who was a charismatic leader, the kind of person who would say, hey, let's all go up to Westwood and we'll get hold of the biggest stone in the world and we'll bring it here. And people would go, yeah, let's go tomorrow. Now, if I said that to people, they'd say, oh, forget it, Follett, we're busy. We've got better things to do. But some people have that charm, don't they? They propose some project like that, and people want to say, yes, let's do it. And so the principal character, there are two principal characters. One of them is a woman called Joya, and she has that charisma. She can get a crowd of people to do something that might not seem particularly logical to everybody. And then there's another character called Seft. He's an engineer, and he is the one who has to solve the practical problems that they face. And when I set out on this book, I was thinking, I probably shouldn't do too much of the engineering problems because engineering problems are not always that interesting. But when I started writing it, I realized that every time these people come across a snag, something that stops them, they're going to be deeply, deeply committed to solving that problem because they have said, we're going to get the biggest stone in the world and we're going to bring it here. And other people have said, no, you're not. It can't be done. You can't move those stones. They're too heavy. And they'd have to come over all this rough ground and swamps and woodland. And they've said, yeah, we can do it. I believe we can do it, they have said. So now, once you've said that, once you've said we can do it, you're really committed, aren't you? You are going to look so foolish if you go home with your tail between your legs and say, yeah, it didn't really work out. So their motivation to solve this problem is very strong. So the engineering bit is actually very dramatic. Yeah. Everybody's looking, everybody's biting their nails, thinking, how are we going to do this? So those are the two drivers. There's the Seft trying desperately to solve these problems, and there's Joya who is trying to keep everybody motivated and make the whole team happy that they're actually doing this extraordinary thing.
They're great characters. And I did love, as a reader, I loved the engineering piece as well, because I also was thinking, how the hell are they going to... The only other option is Ancient Aliens. So you were sort of unlocking the mystery of how it was done, and it was fascinating to get into the practical things as they are solving this and sort of unlocking the history of it. So before we get into the lightning round, what is next for Ken Follett? And would the next one be a thriller or another historical fiction?
Well, I finished Circle of Days about a year ago, and I started writing another one straight away because that's what I do. And this is so interesting, for me. I mean, it's not something that I force myself to do. I'm keen to get onto a new story. But I can't tell you about it because the publishers won't let me. You see, they like to make an announcement about a year before the book is in the shops. They like to make an announcement. The new Ken Follett book is going to be called this, and here's the cover, and this is what the story is about. And if I tell you about it now, it'll be a spoiler, and they'll be so cross with me. So forgive me, please.
Well, when you can, come on back, and we'll do that. How about? Have you ever written for your? There have been a number of film adaptations. I think Pillars of the Earth even has a video game. There's a Danish musical and things like that. Have you ever done any of the screenwriting for any of the...
No, I've never done that. I did, when I was starting out as a writer and trying to make it, I tried all kinds of things. And I did write an episode of a cop show for television, which was actually made, and it wasn't bad. And after that, I got calls from all the cop shows asking me to write a script for them. But by then, Either Needle had come out, and I was trying to think of another book. So I never went in that direction. And actually, I now realize screenwriters tell a story in pictures. I mean, even though they're writing it down, they're telling the director and the actors what is going to be on the screen, what the picture is going to be. And I tell stories in words, and it's a different skill. So my approach to movies and other developments, like there's a great Spanish musical at the moment of The Pillars of the Earth, but I didn't write the songs, So my approach is they know what they're doing. Or most of them do anyway. In Hollywood, there are a lot of very smart people making wonderful movies. It's best for me to leave it to them.
That's a good way to describe it. I hadn't heard it put quite that way, like telling stories in words versus sort of directions for someone. Okay, on to the lightning round for Ken Follett.
All right.
Your favorite book as a kid?
Noddy Goes to Toy Town. Noddy was a toy, in fact. And his head went nid, nod, and he had a bell on his hat, and the bell would ring when he nodded. So he was called Noddy. And when I was 4 years old, I loved those books. And that's who they were written for, sort of 4, 5, and 6-year-olds. They captivated me.
Oh, that's great. Book or book? I know you're on tour, so I don't know how that affects your reading habits, but book or books you're reading now?
I'm reading Nightshade, which is the latest book by Michael Connolly. He writes police procedurals set in LA, and I think he's the best of... There's a lot of people writing that stuff, and he's really the best.
He's awesome. I'm actually reading a galley of his. He's coming on in a few weeks. He's got another one coming out that talks about generative AI. These kids who have conversations with an AI tool that in the end tells them to do horrible things, and so it's a whole...
But with him, you look at... by the time you get to the bottom of the first page, you're hooked. He's really good, isn't he?
He's great. I think it was you who said, never give the reader a feeling of this is a good place to put it down,
exactly.
And I was thinking about what you said as I was reading his galley and as I was reading this. Your least attended book event ever?
Oh my goodness, Chicago. It must have been about 1980, I think. And I really was, Either Needle had been a big success, and I think I was publicizing Triple, or it might have been The Key to Rebecca, but I wasn't really very well known. And it was a department store, and nobody came. The number of people who attended that signing session was actually 0. Some people came up and asked me to sign a book, and I realized they were actually staff of the store because they were being nice.
Just trying to be nice,
because they felt so sorry for me.
So you gave the full talk anyway.
It was just signing.
Oh, it was just signing. Okay. You and a table and books.
Sitting at a table, not signing books.
Okay, so you're also in a rock and blues band. Is the band available to play the Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce wedding?
I'd have to check my diary. No, I'm kidding. Of course we would.
We do it. All right. So just we can put this out and maybe cut off any negotiating headache. Would you do it for free?
Yes, of course I would.
Okay.
But my band always plays for free. I mean, we haven't got the nerve to ask to be paid money, and we're enjoying ourselves too much anyway.
I assume over on that side of the Atlantic, everyone's also following along with the Taylor Swift, and the NFL is doing a few games there, so you guys are up to speed on everything?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And she's phenomenally good. I mean, her songs are so great, don't you think?
Yeah. Well, my daughter, we have a 14-year-old daughter who's obsessed and follows along, and I listen to some of the songs, and they're good.
Good.
And more than that, I respect her as a businesswoman. I mean, she has done phenomenally well.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Travis Kelce, I'm from Philadelphia, so I prefer the other Kelce who played for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Okay.
But, it's good to have a good rival out there, and Travis is a worthy rival for the Eagles. Do you watch any NFL games?
No, I'm afraid no. I'm not much of a sports person. I have a stepson, and I occasionally watch soccer on TV with him, but otherwise, no.
Yeah. Okay. Worst century in history to live?
I guess it would be the 14th century, because that was the century of the Black Death, which was a plague that wiped out somewhere between a third and half of the population of Europe, Middle East, and North Africa. A terrible time for the human race.
Yeah, and a grisly, painful death. If you could travel to any point in history to bear witness to events for a single day, when and where?
1598, the premiere of Hamlet.
Wow, great answer. I love how you just...
Yeah, I would love, and
the Globe Theater, I guess it would be then, or was that around?
Yes, it would be at the Globe, and I would love to go backstage and talk to the playwright about it.
That's a great answer. I love that. Let's see. Favorite few recent TV shows to recommend?
Well, there's a TV show I love called Grace. It's a cop show. It's a police procedural, but it's based on novels by Peter James, who's a really good writer. And so the TV episodes, each one is based on one of his novels, and they're great stories. And he's written about 20, and they're really good. The TV people have run out of them, so we're waiting for him to write another one. Peter James, his name is. He's terrific.
I'll check that out. And the show Grace, is that can I get that on Netflix? Or
Grace is the name of the detective.
The show.
Inspector Grace. Yeah.
Inspector Grace. Okay.
And it's the name of the show. Yeah.
All right. Last question for Ken Follett. One piece of advice for the audience.
Well, we live in judgmental times. And so I would give them advice that Jesus gave us. Judge not, lest ye be judged.
I love, we could all use a healthy dose of that.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Ken, what a pleasure. Let's do it again next time with better champagne, though. I'm sorry about the champagne today. It's great to meet you.
My pleasure. Thank you.